This is the iPhone XS and this is the iPhone XS Max. They're Apple's latest iPhones. And there's one question which seems to be on everybody's mind. Is this phone too big? I have this year's phone and last year's phone. Now, which is which, do you think? Actually, they're both almost exactly the same size. So this is the iPhone XS Max and this is the iPhone 8 Plus, which is still on sale, by the way. They're actually almost identical in size. In fact, this phone here is a little bit bigger than this phone here. But there are some differences between the two phones. This has a 6.5-inch display, whereas this display is 5.5 inches. So while they're the same size in overall footprint, this is much better for doing a certain number of things. So one of the things that the bigger screen here is good for is watching television and video, and Apple knows this. It has deliberately made a phone that you are going to watch TV more on. So I have Netflix on here and I have video on here, and you can definitely see that there's a big difference in the size, in the viewing size.
Johnny was great, and I think it was...
So the speakers are 50% louder according to Apple, and this means that you're more likely to actually watch it as you would watch an iPad or a tablet without the use of headphones. It has an enhanced portrait mode, and what that basically means is you can take a picture of somebody or something and you can alter what they call the depth of field or the bokeh behind that person. In other words, you can make the subject of the photograph stick out a lot more clearly than you can with other camera phones. I can actually change what's known as the depth of field or the blur factor behind my head to make myself lift out of the photo. This is something that very few phones can do, and it's basically a software, a computational photography feature. Now, Apple are talking about this an awful lot because the lenses in here are still quite small. So the iPhone XS, this is the iPhone XS Max, it has two 12 megapixel lenses on the back. One's a f1.8 and the other's f2.4, and it has a selfie camera, a 7 megapixel selfie camera on the front. What's really driving this is the chip beneath the hood, which is Apple's A12 Bionic, which essentially is a more powerful chip than you're going to get in a lot of laptops. And this essentially works with the cameras in real time to create these effects. Finally, on the camera lenses, both of those two rear 12 megapixel lenses are stabilized. That's really important for video. So it means if you're taking a shot of somebody walking by, or if you're in a plane and you're taking a picture of the plane leaving or landing, it means that when you play it back, everything is really, really nice and smooth. So what else is new about the iPhone XS and XS Max? Well, it has a better grade of water resistance. So it's an IP68 level. That means that it can be put into liquid, and there are different types of liquid that it can survive under for up to 30 minutes at up to 2 meters. That includes the toilet, I've been told by Apple. It includes alcohol in certain circumstances, and if you want to see just how much it includes alcohol, go back to the video we did last year where I tested it out with some Guinness. It also now comes with a maximum of 512 gigabytes of storage, which is a whopping amount of an internal memory storage. And this is really for people who either, like me, take an awful lot of photographs and video, or who don't really trust the cloud as their primary storage platform. So it comes in grades of 64 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes, and 512 gigabytes. But what about battery life, which is a feature that an awful lot of people complain about? Well, the iPhone XS Max goes for 90 minutes longer than last year's iPhone X. The regular sized iPhone XS goes for 30 minutes longer than last year's model. A couple of final points about these new phones. They do come with what Apple calls a dual SIM or an eSIM functionality. Now, this essentially is the ability to have two accounts running on your phone. It's particularly good for travelers, and I'll give you a scenario of how it helps somebody like me. When I go to the States, getting access to mobile data is extremely expensive. It's very, very awkward as well. You have to go to a shop, you have to get a SIM card, you have to buy a scratch card. It takes ages and it's really, really expensive. Now at the moment, if you have an iPad Pro, for example, it comes with something called mobile data in the settings. If you go for the cellular model, you just essentially flick that on and it gives you a choice of several local operators. The one I go with at the moment costs $10 for 5 gigabytes for 6 months with T-Mobile. Now that's because the iPad Pro has an embedded SIM card inside. The new iPhone XS has what they call an eSIM. Now there are only a few countries in which this will work. It won't work in Ireland, but it will work in the US. So if you have one of these and you're with Vodafone or 3 or Air here and you go to the States, you will be able to turn this on and get access to mobile data there, probably cheaper than you would with a local operator. These operators will be competing on the iPhone platform itself. So of course the iPhone XS and XS Max come with iOS 12, as will lots of other existing iPhones when they're upgraded over the next few weeks. But one of the most interesting features about iOS 12 is a thing called screen time. So you can set time limits as to how long you use particular apps for, or a group of apps, like for example social networking apps. It actually groups them all into one grouping. You can allocate times that you're allowed to use and not allowed to use your apps. And really interestingly, you can also control the iPhones or iPads or iOS devices that are in the family setup, or maybe your kids' devices, for example. And this goes very, very deep into the type of content that they can actually use and access. You can, for example, stop your kid, if your kid is using an iPad to play games, you can stop them making friends within games. You can stop them playing multiplayer games if you want. You can restrict the type of web access that they have by the category of content that comes through. So it gives you specific metrics on things like adult websites that you can allow or disallow. So this is going to be a really, really big deal for parents in particular, and it comes loaded with the iPhone XS devices. This is an S-level upgrade. So every second year, Apple releases an S version of the phone they launched the year before. Now this is a very, very solid upgrade. It more or less is the exact same shape and size to last year's iPhone X model, with the exception of the iPhone XS Max, which now has this beautiful big 6.5-inch OLED screen. The real power behind this lies in the chip. So the A12 chip that they've put into this phone enables an awful lot of things that very few of the other iPhones can do. Now it's pricey. It starts at $1179 and the iPhone XS Max starts at $1279. If you compare that to what the iPhone XR next month is going to start at $879, that's a full 300 to 400 euro cheaper. And essentially all it's missing is one camera, and the screen is a slightly lower grade level at LCD rather than OLED. So do you need this phone? That's entirely up to the user to decide. It's a very solid upgrade. It's very powerful. The new camera does have some knockout features. The screen time will be attractive to a lot of parents. And if you use your phone to watch video or television a lot, or if you like taking photos and you like framing photos on a bigger screen, this will be very, very attractive. For everybody else, the iPhone XR, or maybe even the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 7, which they're still selling, might do the business.